Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and the following story is the kind of story that honestly I don't like to do. I don't like to do these stories because they involve the harm of children, okay? And unfortunately, we live in this society that when you bring up reported accounts of high-level child trafficking, that also includes, okay, ritualistic abuse. And we're going to try to keep the terms pretty low level. We don't want to get in trouble for cyberbullying anybody. We don't want to get too graphic because this story is pretty horrific. All right. And we're going to play this local Fox News clip. And it talks about a network of children that have been trafficked and abused for at least a two-decade period between 2010 and 1990. All right? Now, I want you to really think about this for a minute. They also say that it involves high-profile individuals. Now, I am going to be referencing two books, especially this one right here, the follow-up to the Franklin cover-up, okay, the Franklin Scandal, by Nick Bryant, because it does a great job at the end showing you just a massive amount of documentation that backs up his book, from federal filings to local media reports to affidavits to arrest records, okay, to autopsy reports. He does an amazing job. All right, this is what's the opposite of fiction, okay? And just to lead it off before we get into this local ring, later on, I'm going to be playing a portion of my film, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, because it encompasses these high-level prostitution rings that involve what? Call boys. Call boys. Now, it's one thing to be said, hey, you're compromised because you act like a Christian conservative, right? But in reality, you're not a Christian conservative. You're into all these weird clubs and occultic themes and rituals, right? But you like to have sex with men as well. All right? And we're going to talk about Gannon Gate as well later on. That's whatever. Unfortunately, you are super compromised, and I don't want you in office, but you take it to another level when it involves children. So before we get into this Utah ring, one of the things I want to highlight right now quickly, okay, is Chevy Chase principal resigns. This is 1989. A lot of people out there know about the Franklin cover-up that I've been talking about, all right? And they should read this book, and they should read the Franklin Scandal, 100%. They should also watch Conspiracy of Silence. I know many of you are familiar with this other Washington Times headline, Homosexual Prostitution Inquiry Ensnares VIPs with Reagan and Bush. Callboys took midnight tour of the White House. And again, you can find this documentary. It's actually still on YouTube. That's a Cliff Notes to the books that we're talking about. All right? So you're like, wait a minute, the principal resigned. Why did he resign? Because the activity was happening after hours in the school. And when we get to Barney Frank later, there was an ethics committee hearing on it because his aide that he was paying, all right, was running it out of there as well. And when it comes down to it, you find out, wait a minute, you're talking about trauma-based activities. You're talking about child trafficking. And that child trafficking, by the way, a lot of the times turns into what? You know, you can't call it child anymore, but human trafficking. They get these people started young. I want to read this really quick. This is 2017. We've covered it many times. 40 years later, the story seems hard to credit. In the summer of 1977, Capitol Hill was gripped by revelations of the CIA's secret MK Ultra mind control research program. Well, here's the real deal. They were running brothels, okay, brothels coast to coast. And do you think that, first of all, those are trafficked women, okay, but were they all women at the time? This is in the 70s. Let's just type that in. Let's get to that part right there. Okay, they were running brothels. You see that? Coast to coast. And they were bugging the places, by the way. Let's get down to, where is it right here? That's brothels. Oh, come on. They were bugging these places, guys. All right, so they were also using it. In fact, why don't I type it in right now. Google is down, I think, so Bing.com, but we're going to type it in. We're going to type in MK Ultra brothels and see what comes up. All right? So they were bugging these places. They were using it for blackmail, and you see this theme over and over and over again. And when you get to the Franklin scandal, it's not just high-level political figures there. It's the locals. It's law enforcement that's been accused. And in this case, it seems like it's a therapist, okay? And one of the pieces of fiction out there that I want to highlight right here, and you look here, power broker served drugs, sex at parties, bugged for blackmail. You see? That's also, I believe, a Washington Times image. They did a lot of good work on this. But right now, we got a new season of True Detective coming up. Why do I bring up True Detective? Because the story arc not only brings up in the last season, the Franklin scandal specifically, it is about high-level human trafficking that is occultic in nature and murder. Okay? These are just some of the screenshots of the running themes that are in this show. You understand? So that's why we're bringing all this stuff up, because now we're getting to the meat and potatoes of the story. Thumbs the video up, subscribe and share. Remember, we're on Rumble, Rockfin, Podbean. We're on Twitter. And, of course, right now we're on YouTube. Hopefully we're not going to get in trouble for any cyberbullying today. So let's bring up this story. It's almost too unbelievable, but it's not. It involves 3 major areas of Utah and 20 years of SRA abuse of children, allegedly.
More developing news tonight. Multiple local and federal law enforcement agencies are investigating ritualistic sexual abuse, also human trafficking of children all over Utah. Fox 13 News investigative reporter Adam Herbets has been following the story and takes a closer look.
Well, the Utah County Sheriff's Office opened this case in April 2021, but according to our confidential sources, they are not starting from scratch. Here's what the department is willing to share so far. Reports of ritualistic sexual abuse and human trafficking involving children in at least these 3 areas: Utah County, San Pete County, and Juab County between the years of 1990 and 2010. The Sheriff's Office has not released any other specifics. However, we have learned some of the subjects of this investigation are high-profile individuals.
We're just being as careful as we can before we toss names out. Any given individual, it's the way it is. I mean, the chips fall where they are, and we follow them.
One of them was a therapist who was previously charged with similar crimes against young female family members, but not convicted.
So again, think about this. Some of these people do get charged and get off. And when they do get convicted, why are their sentences not life ones when they're abusing children? You know, you look at my Twitter feed, I recently retweeted a story about this law enforcement officer that has all of this, you look at what Duggar had, disgusting, disturbing material. Let's call it material. Okay, CP material, sometimes involving infants. These people are the equivalent of human demons, no matter what you believe in, especially if you believe in love and a real loving relationship with you and your child. Okay, this is the stuff that really disturbs you. And then you get into the religious aspects of these things. You look at this, and look, MK Ultra uses trauma-based mind control. Why is it always constantly in this weird, dark, occultic nature coming up again and again and again? And by the way, when you look at True Detective and all of these processes, some of the people involved are the high-level local people in law enforcement, in the church. And remember, the first real massive overtones of this high-level sexual abuse coming out was through the church, which is even more disturbing. So let's go back to the clip, and continue on, and you're going to hear from one of the victims. Okay, and I hope more people do come out and speak up.
For the past few months, I have also been reviewing police reports and body camera video related to that case. Watch and listen how one of the victims describes his interaction with the therapist who he met through a referral from the church.
Hypnosis was a big part of it. He told me that from the very beginning, that was his main technique. Dr. would say, do you want to be healed of your homosexuality or not? And the answer was yes.
Do you think this time it will be different?
I do think it will be different. I think in part because I have some information that can connect some dots.
That man says he hopes sharing his story will empower more victims to come forward. As part of our investigation, we continue to review records related to potential targets of this investigation. We will bring you updates as we confirm more with law enforcement.
Criminal charges, we believe it'll get to that point, but we just haven't gotten there yet. The sooner, the better. We don't want to let anything sit longer than is necessary.
The message at this point for any victims or anyone with information is to please call the Utah County Sheriff's Office.
And unfortunately, if we go into that theme of True Detective, at the very end of the day, even though they're somewhat successful at bringing some justice, they get nowhere near the top of the network. And then in the subsequent season, it's more about human trafficking of people that are of age with more of an occult undertone via the bird stuff, but they're out in Sonoma, California. All right. And in the last one, they try to throw you for a loop with these, I guess you could say, false red herrings of occultism. But now we're going to get into that call boy ring. And again, the reason we're talking about prostitution on a high level is because a lot of these people that actually survive this type of abuse as children, they get trafficked later on, and it normalizes it into them becoming prostitutes. So, plus this one involves the media and the Bush administration. And I know there are a lot of people now that watch all this type of material and say, oh, it's the left. Wiener's laptop. Hey, guys, you got to learn about Dennis Hassert. You got to learn about the Franklin scandal. You know, it's not just Barney Frank that we go into in this. You know, I've done a lot on Hassert himself. But here we go. Let's get into it. Let's get into James Gannon and then into the Franklin scandal.
It was revealed in 2004 that right-wing blogger James Guckert unprecedented access to the White House during the Iraq War was actually Jeff Gannon, a madam and male prostitute for MilitaryStuds.com. During his 2 years writing for GOP USA and Talon News, Gannon officially made over 200 appearances at the White House. Oddly enough, over 24 of these visits would take place when there were no scheduled briefings. He failed to check in or out with the Secret Service on many other occasions, coming and going as he pleased. These type of activities are not new to the White House. In 1989, headlines involving callboys in the White House rocked the cover of the Washington Times.
I mean, take a look at that receipt right there, and then read into it and find out what happened to a guy named Craig Spence. All right? Again, Franklin cover-up and the Franklin scandal follow-up are must-reads to understand how long this has been going on and how many of these people are shielded.
The Washington Times reported today that unidentified White House aides in the Carter, Reagan, and Bush administrations now are being investigated for using the services of a callboy ring. The paper reports that 2 of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year.
Hundreds of credit card receipts obtained by the Washington Times confirm that its clients were key officials of the Reagan and Bush administrations, military officers, congressional aides, and U.S. and foreign businessmen with close social ties to Washington's political elite. This ring extended beyond the White House and into Congressman Barney Frank's bedroom.
Barney Frank, one of 2 openly homosexual members of Congress, acknowledged having used a male prostitute, whom he then hired as a personal employee. The man had keys to Frank's basement apartment on Capitol Hill. Frank paid him approximately $20,000 out of his own pocket to be his housekeeper and driver. But
So as you can see there, right? School used for sex ring. You see that? That's also right there. You can see it right in here. School used for sex ring. So that's what we're talking about that principal that had to resign. Okay? You get it? You see what we're saying? This is that story right here. So, wait, it was at a school? Oh, at an elementary school? And at his apartment? And his lover was a call boy? Oh, and he said Frank was fully aware and this did involve, what, underage people? You never hear about this stuff, ever.
Reported in today's Washington Times, the man was on probation for sex crimes and a drug conviction, and he ran a prostitution business out of Frank's home.
Although Frank tried to claim ignorance, Stephen Goby, the prostitute in question, claimed that Frank was completely aware of what was going on and was even receiving free and discounted sexual services. The fix seemed to be in. Frank was threatening members of Congress to remain silent prior to being exposed in this sex ring.
Massachusetts Democrat Barney Frank, a homosexual, threatened to expose fellow congressmen he knew to be gay unless they stopped spreading rumors.
Questions stopped and Frank walked away with a slap on the wrist. Some members of the Ethics Committee were disgusted.
Do we tolerate, do we condone a member of this body who knowingly permits a house of prostitution to be operated out of his residence?
I mean, what can I tell you guys? In fact, I think this gets into, after this, the fact that you have this guy who never went to jail, okay, Foley, who was heading up this division that was supposed to be protecting children, went on the Chris Hansen show, praised him, and then got caught in the sexting of pages scandal and never does any time. He goes to rehab.
You have just heard one of the most edited, selective garbage that has ever been put forth, in my opinion, in this House.
Again, we see people of the highest levels of power involved in the most repulsive and decadent of crimes.
They couldn't care less about the code of conduct. Everybody up there
as the media keeps any revelations quiet. Unfortunately, these type of activities continue to this day. Florida Congressman Mark Foley chaired the House caucus on missing and exploited children and went on television praising Chris Hansen's To Catch a Predator series.
The Dateline piece has probably done more than any law we can create.
Foley was later caught attempting to have sexual relations with numerous underage pages.
Congressman Mark Foley, the man who championed the Child Protection Act of 2006, resigned after inappropriate emails and instant messages surfaced that he sent to former congressional pages.
Once more, no charges were even filed.
Foley himself has checked into rehab. No one has been charged with any crime.
No one has been charged with any crime. So we're going to keep an eye on this Utah story. Unfortunately, with the levity of a lot of these things that these people of prominence who are high-level individuals have, I don't know how far we're going to get, but at least the law enforcement officer there seems genuine, and it's hopeful that we're going to find out more of this. And I had a discussion before we close it out. I had a discussion with a pretty high-profile individual myself about the history of this thing. And I went over a lot of the things we just went over there. And he says, well, who's running it now? Who's running it now? Think about it. If the CIA had brothels on the East and West Coast then, if people like John Kiriakou have said some provocative things about getting child prostitutes for their informants, who do you think is running it now? If the revelations about Jeffrey Epstein and the gang and their connections to intelligence are true, who is running it now? I'm glad we can ask those questions. So guys, if you liked this video, you want to support the broadcast, first thing you can do is check out the links below. You can buy me a coffee. That'd be great. 5, 10, 15 bucks. It means the world to me. It's how we do this thing. We're on Podbean. We're on Rockfin Uncensored, over 57,000 strong now, folks. And we rumbling. We're trying to explode. We don't even have 500 subscribers on Rumble. Let's get it to 1,000, guys. Share the links. Check out all the documentary films, including the one you just saw pieces of right there, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. Shade the motion picture. 9/11 is essential to understanding what's going on right now. Loose Change Final Cut and Fabled Enemies. And yeah, I guess we're kind of on YouTube as well, even though we're fully demonetized and completely censored. So guys, I love you. Obviously, this issue, it ain't about left or right. It never has been. It is totally about right and wrong, and protecting children is something that should be the forefront of every individual out there and society in general. I love you guys, and I'll see you on the flip side.